What's going on, good people of the internet? It is time once again for Comics Unmasked, the podcast where a bunch of folks shoot the breeze and talk about comic books and such. I never thought this day would come. Genuinely, I never thought this day would come where I would get to sit down with my idol, my favorite writer in the history of comic books, David F. Walker. From writing books at Marvel like Power Man and Iron Fist and Luke Cage and Nighthawk, to then going over to DC and writing Cyborg and then co-creating Naomi with Brian Michael Bendis, this dude has done so much, including Eisner-winning books like Bitterroot with Chuck Brown and Sanford Green. This dude has done so much when it comes to writing comic books and writing some of the best comic books I've ever read in my entire life. Genuinely, the badass mofo himself is here to talk with y'all about his brand new Kickstarter, The Monster of Blackenstein, not to be confused with Blackenstein. When I tell y'all, this book is going to have you laughing, but also have you in your feels, because it is definitely blaxploitation at its finest, but it's also like commentary staring you in the face in the best way, and I love it to death. And it had me in my feels because it hit close to home, and we'll talk about that during the interview. And I genuinely hope more people check out this Kickstarter. It's fully funded, so like, you know, you're going to be able to get your copy of this book if you sign up for the Kickstarter. And I'm proud that I backed it because I love David as a writer. I love what he does, and I love that he's able to just channel blaxploitation the best way to give us one of the best comics that I think has ever been made, because he is able to do it with no limitations. He is able to tell the story the way he wants to, and it comes out in the best way possible. It would mean the world to me if you guys checked out this interview. I had a blast sitting down with my idol, and we kind of look alike, which is kind of hilarious. So check it out for that reason alone, that you get to see like almost a time warp happening on your screen. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoy. Check it out. So, the badass mofo himself. I never thought I'd see this day. Like, genuinely, I never thought this day would come. And I am so grateful to sit down with you, genuinely. And the question that I always start with is the origin story, the issue zero. What was the first comic that got you to be like, this is my life? Like, even if I never write the books, comics are going to be part of my existence for the rest of the days. Like, I joke around about the fact that my mom accidentally gave me Batman the Cult by Starlin when I was like 6. So
Okay.
like, I always try to like be like, what is the book that made you go, this is your life now?
Okay, so it's a great question, and it's a little, it's not complicated really, but so I'm older than a lot of people realize, even with the gray, but like, black don't crack and beige don't age, right? So
Yes.
um, I when I was a kid growing up, the animated Spider-Man show from the '60s and the live action Batman show from the '60s were in syndication. This was
Right.
in the '70s. I'm not, I'm old. I'm old. We'll leave it at that. So I was introduced to superheroes from almost the very beginning, and my mom recognized how much I loved superheroes. I didn't know that comic books existed until my mom bought me my first comic book, which was an issue of Batman. And I'm not nerdy enough that I can tell you what number it is, but I still have
Okay.
that issue, right? And that was how I learned how to read. I wanted to read those words in the balloons. And so,
Right.
by the time I was like in, kindergarten, first grade, I knew how to read. It was everything. It was all comics. There's something about the way my brain was wired, reacted to them. And I was also, this was a time when newspapers had their daily comic strips. They had the Sunday strips. So you didn't even have to buy comics to, get
Be a
comics,
part of it.
be
Yeah.
a part of it. Um, and was there any one particular comic that I just absolutely fell in love with? You know, like, honestly, and this was a little bit older, but I loved, um, Marvel was putting out these black and white magazines. They had Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, Savage Sword of Conan, Planet of the Apes, a few others. And those Planet of the Apes books changed me, right? Those were the
Is that
ones
why
that
you wanted to write it later on? Like, you had to have touch that universe one time?
that was huge for me. What Star Wars is for a lot of other people, Planet of the Apes was for me.
Fair enough.
But then there was also, and this is the one that like trips people out, and they don't believe me. Um, was that in the 70s, for a time, Warren Publishing was reprinting issues of the Spirit Stories by
Oh.
Will Eisner. You could buy these on the newsstand, and um, and so I had a couple of those. So we're
Mm.
talking, I'm like maybe 6 years old, and I'm studying the Spirit, right? I'm studying Will
Mm.
Eisner, um, and in the broad scheme of it all, he's responsible for me being a creator, because then we skip ahead years
Okay.
later, and there was an encounter with Will Eisner that was like, that old, there's an old Coca-Cola commercial with Mean Joe Green where he
Mm.
throws this kid his sweaty towel or whatever.
Yeah, I've
um,
seen it. That's crazy.
but that was, and there's a couple other little things that happened, which was, um, amongst other things, I went to elementary school. I grew up on the East Coast, and I went to elementary school with this girl, and her father was a syndicated cartoonist. He had a daily
Mm.
strip,
Oh wow.
and his name was Dick Cavalli. I always forget the name of his strip, but he came and visited us in
Mm.
school, like show and tell. She brought her dad to school,
Right.
and this guy knew Charles Schultz, who did the Peanuts. He knew everybody,
Yeah.
but he's explaining to us how cartoons get made. We were in second grade when this happened. And
Mm.
so suddenly, at a very early age, I was shown how it works, right? Like, because I think a
Yeah.
lot of kids, not even kids, adults today, still, they don't understand how comics get made, right?
Yeah.
Um, but here I am at, like, say, 6 years old, 7 years old, and it was explained to me. It was boom, take a piece of paper, you take, a pen or whatever, and you
Mm.
write it out, you draw it out. And I was like, yo, this is what I want to do. Like, this was, I loved, and I still love this feeling. I love getting lost I love movies, I love books, I love comics. But the thing about comics that I love so much is that as a kid, I learned, oh, I can make these myself, right? Like,
Mm.
we tried, my cousins and I, we tried making a movie when we were kids, and like, we were so naive, we didn't realize that you had to have film in the camera. We had a camera,
Right.
but we just thought there was, the film was in there or something, like
Yeah.
it was magic or something. So, and I, to this day, I mean, I'm not a particularly gifted artist, but I can get some of my points across.
Hey, those
And
Patreon noodles are great though. Like I love those so much.
well, thank you, man. It's I mean, I did go to school. I studied art. Um, if there's one area in my life that I really lack patience, that's it. And I've always lacked that patience, and that's in that realm. It's been my undoing. Um, but just, every couple days, I'll be doodling, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna draw a story, right? I'm gonna draw a comic that I'm gonna write. And then next thing you know, I'm back to being 16 years old, and like, only I had hair that I could pull out. So
Mm. That's always that great feeling, and it's like I know that so well because like for me, just talking to people about the media means so much to me, and it's like I always like you mentioned Bendis before we started, and it's like I look at that poster over there. I
mhm,
have had that since the first book came out of Miles. And
yeah,
it's like that feeling you get of reading this medium or reading Bitterroot, or like I remember reading One Fall, and like you took a love of mine of wrestling and comics and put them together, and it
yeah,
was just like you did something magical with that, and it's always so nice when you find that feeling. I remember reading Isabella's Black Lightning for the first time, and it was like
mhm,
seeing yourself on a page even on top of that when you're reading these different ideas. It's a crazy feeling that some people will never fully understand. It's like I think about the fact that like some people always say, well, why does it matter if the character's black? And it's like you don't get it,
yeah.
and
You
it's a
don't.
crazy thought process.
And so for me now, if you want to go there, if you really
Mm.
want to go there, I remember the first comic I saw with the Falcon in it. It was Captain America and the Falcon, of course. Never asked me numbers because I don't remember the
Mm.
issue numbers. Um, but I remember this particular story, and it was like, oh, it was my introduction to the Falcon. And I
Yeah.
remember my first Luke Cage comics because my cousin bought one at a 7-Eleven,
Mm.
and we were like, we loved it, but we also were clowning it because we were like,
Because Sweet Christmas.
who talks like this, right? Um, and this is back in the 70s. There wasn't really, this is, you bought your comics at, most of us bought our comics at like either 7-Eleven, drugstore, whatever, newsstand.
Mm,
And so you might get like, say, you know, Hero for Hire, Luke Cage Hero for Hire, saying you get like number 12 on the
mm,
newsstand. And then a month later, you might see number 10 on the newsstands, right? If you went to a
mm,
different newsstand and getting all of the issues, and it was always very catch as catch can. Um, but it was both Falcon and Luke Cage were the two first black superheroes that my cousin and I discovered together. And the thing about Luke Cage was he had his own title, which was just the
mm.
coolest thing to us. But it was also funny because we were like, again, don't know
Talking like
black folks
crazy.
talk like this, right? And then the thing about Falcon was like, okay, he was Robin. There's Batman
Mm,
and Robin, there's Captain America and Falcon, right? And if you are on
yeah.
the bottom part of the and, whether it's the word and or an ampersand, um, yeah, it's kind of it's not the same. So,
Mm,
um, but those titles taught me about, I wouldn't know to call it representation then,
mm,
but it was I suddenly became very aware. I became very aware at an early age
mm,
that, oh, I'm not seeing that many folks that look. Well, first off, I never see, and I'm sure you can relate to this. I never see characters that look like me ever, right?
mm.
Because
Yeah.
I don't ever see, even though I identify as being black, I'm really biracial, and it's
Yeah.
very rare that you see biracial characters. Now, you might see actors that you can tell,
Mm,
oh, yeah, they got a little vanilla in the chocolate, right? But
mm.
it's very rare. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of a character that I've seen that is biracial and really hits it right,
It's
you
it's
know.
crazy too, and it's like I remember. Well, I think it was Guggenheim, retconned Blade to be biracial,
Mhm.
and then like no one ever fixed it, and it's been my favorite little like gotcha thing to mess with people about is that like Blade is a mixed kid, but he don't look it because of Wesley. They always want to copy Wesley's design, and
See, I
it's
didn't know that,
so
but isn't he
funny.
British too, though? Like he's
Yeah, he like
British
he's
now.
British. Yeah. So it's
Like,
just a
but
weird,
when?
fun thing that because of that, like I remember recently with Marvel Rivals, like hearing sort of like a Blade esque voice for him. It's like that's supposed to be British, but like we're not gonna talk about that.
See, I've never. I'm sure I could just go onto some wiki page or something. I'm pretty sure that the Blade I grew up with wasn't British. The one that was probably, was it Marv Wolfman that was writing Tomb of Dracula? I'm trying to remember who's
Yeah, I
writing.
believe so. Yeah.
I should
I
I
like
should
if
ask
you
him
ever
that.
see Sanford, my biggest thing that if I ever had the money, I want him just to redraw that cover for me. Like genuinely, like I would love that because like Tuba Dracula, I've went back and read it, and it's like if I could just have a black person rewrite this, it would be the coldest stuff ever. Like genuinely, I could see y'all just like for an anniversary issue, just rewriting that. It would be the greatest thing ever.
It's, hey, maybe one of these days. I don't know. I mean, it's a, maybe that's where the conversation is going now. Uh, I've I've offered and I've talked and I've asked about it, and it's there's a lot of characters that I've said, yeah, I'll write them, throw them my way, um, and but the key is that what I would like to do with them, and I
Mm.
think what a lot of the readers and the people who appreciate my work would like me to do with them, I'm not going to get to do, right. and
Yeah,
and
I
it
have
was
thoughts about that. We'll get to that.
it was Jason Reeves called me a couple weeks ago. We were just chopping it up, and somehow Cyborg came up, and I don't talk about that
Oh,
that often, right? And he
yeah.
goes, man, your run on Cyborg was the best ever, and I was like, yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. And he's like, no, you don't understand. I don't know if you ever talked to Reeves or not, but
I
he's
haven't known.
he's a great cat. Um, and Jason says to me, he goes, man, you gave Cyborg his penis back, and I was just like.
I mean,
And
let's be. I'll be honest. Like, it's such a great statement on that moment because, like, it was so frustrating. Like, I left when the New 52 started. I read all of the, like, John's Justice League,
yeah,
that first volume, and then I saw everybody else get a book except Vic, and I was
yeah,
like, all right, cool, I'm gone. And I pieced out off of DC for years.
yeah.
Like, genuinely, it was that bad. And then when I saw the poster in the comic shop that you were doing Cyborg, I was like, okay, now I can come back because you're doing something right, and it felt good. And even that first issue, I remember rereading it a few weeks ago, where like you straight up are just like, all right, I died, and now I'm back, and we're gonna deal with that. It was the funniest thing ever.
And so when Reeves said that, when Jason said that to me, and this is, I swear, this was like 2 weeks ago, because it was before the Kickstarter campaign. It was right around the time the Kickstarter campaign started, and so I was calling to ask him some advice on. You know, he was calling me, but I needed some advice. Um, and so we're talking about it, and I realized like, oh, that's probably one more thing that DC hates about me, right? Because they pretty much got rid of it. And when I say it, I'm talking his penis. But
Yeah, Semper tried, but like it didn't go well. Like it felt like they were like, especially for a veteran like him in the industry, it felt like they were pulling him along trying to do something at Rebirth.
they what my understanding, I because I talked to Marv Wolfman. It was one of the first times I ever talked to him. We were at a convention, and he came up to me. He's a very nice gentleman. I'm a huge fan. I was trying not to geek out, and he said, I think he wrote like 5 issues after me or something like that, 4 or 5 issues
Well,
before
like
something.
he took over for you, and then Semper came on, and then Marv came back because Semper left, and it was
Yeah,
like that's weird.
and so Marv asked me some really serious questions, and because he did stuff that was not part of my plan, that I never blamed him because I understand how editorial works. But the
Right.
first thing they did was they turned Vic's mother, who was a ghost in the machine, they made her evil, and I was like,
Yeah.
you don't do that with a black woman. You don't do that with a black man's mother. I was like, she was meant to become a recurring character if I had stayed on the book.
Yeah.
And so one of the first things they did was reverse that. And he said to me, he said, "Oh, well, they told me that was your plan." And I was like, "Well, of course they told you that, because like they're trained to lie." And I wasn't mad at him, but I was, and I wasn't even that mad at DC. I mean, when you really stop and think about it, mainstream comics is built on a lot of undoing of what people before you have done, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of it becomes a question of how long do they wait before you undo it. And with
Mm.
me, like, the body wasn't even cold yet, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
and
Like
and
like you're even seeing that right now with Jonathan Kent this past week. Like Ben just put all that work in, and now they're like, all right, cool, we'll have little man and like adult non-Superman man over here.
yeah,
It's like it's very interesting to see how editorial waits and like sees when the body's cold, but in your case, they just dove right in.
yeah, no, they it was, there sometimes you can read the signs, but it was interesting because when I sent them, I sent an email. um I just turned in the script to issue probably 7 or 8, and I said, okay, this is going to be my last one. I'm done. And it was no fanfare, none of this. I can't take this bullshit anymore. And their response was, okay. And that was what I knew. There was nobody trying to talk me out of it. There was nobody, and that
Man.
sort of sums up my relationship. When I came back to DC, did Naomi with Brian and Jamal, and then Brian and I did some issues of Young Justice together. That was
Yes.
Brian who brought me back, right?
Mm.
And the moment those titles were over,
Mm.
I did one short story for DC, aside from the Naomi stuff and the Young Justice stuff. I did one short story. That was it. And
Mm.
and I know I like, I can't say I know for a fact. I can't prove it. I couldn't prove it in a court of law. But they don't want to work with me, right? There's,
Mm.
Ray Height posted something a few weeks ago about, this dream project he wanted to do with me at DC. And I was like, yeah, I remember it because I bought all the
Mm.
comics and read them all, and I was ready. and it was, and I was at that point was like, oh, I think it's going to happen. If it wasn't that, it was going to be something else. And then, like, it was like getting ghosted by someone you thought that it was going all right. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, yeah, we
Yeah.
went out on 3 dates, and slept together on the fourth date, and then you ghosted me, and so yeah.
That's insane. It just like it breaks my heart because like I just there's so much that I would love to see you do over there, and it's like I'll even like admit it. I'm waiting for you to touch Sam. Like you and Sam. Like that's my dream book. Like if you go back to Marvel, that's my one because you love Sam. I
So
love Sam because it was Black Lightning and Priest is Captain America and Falcon that I started with. So it's
yeah.
like that's why like I love that we both share that love because it's like if you and Sam could just work, I'd be the happiest kid in the world, like
So
genuinely.
so I'll tell you two crazy things happened with Sam. Right.
Oh.
Um, I got Bendis had called me. I hadn't made it to Marvel yet.
Mm.
And Bendis and I were talking, and he was like, I really think it's time for you to make a move. And this is really important. A lot of people don't understand this. I never asked Brian to help me out, to give me the hookup,
Mm.
anything like that. I needed to know that I was going to make it on my own, right?
Right.
And so he had said he had seen an advanced screening of Winter Soldier, and he said,
Mm.
hey, Sam Wilson plays a big part of this. Now is the time. He was like, you need to put together a Sam Wilson pitch. And so I did, but the thing was, it was Ultimate Sam Wilson, because he was in the Ultimate
Mm.
universe. Um and and I, if I remember correctly, I think I had two pitches. I think I had one that would work for the Ultimate line, and then one that would work for the main 616 line. Um and it involved, very similar to what Rick Remender did, but the
Mm.
context was very different. And Rick Remender hadn't pitched it, right? Um,
Right.
and or he hadn't started doing it yet. And then Brian called me one day and he was like, "Yeah, forget it. You're not going to get to do Sam." He's like, "Rick
Mm.
is turning him into Captain America," and I was like, "What?" And my thing was like, it wasn't going to be. What I do remember of my story was, it was because they'd already done the death of Captain America, so it was
Right.
like, we're not going to kill him. But I had it like something, I can't remember specifically what happened, but it was um it was like Falcon Unleashed. You know what I'm saying?
Ooh.
It was going to
Okay.
be, I really wanted to reinvent him, um in a way that, in a lot of ways, it's how he turned out in the those first two movies. And it
Mm.
was seeing him as, like, because he wasn't Snap Wilson. He wasn't the way he'd been when they first introduced him, which he had
Right.
so many crazy backstories. He was an agent of the Red Skull and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And um, you know, and I may have even pitched at one point like a Falcon Year One sort of thing too. And
Ooh.
I was
Okay.
I pitched a lot of wacky things over the years, and it was always like, oh, that won't work, right? and
Mm.
and the lesson I learned from that was, yeah, sometimes it's better just not to pitch anything, because they, like, the this myopic vision that a lot of those people have. um
Mm.
because my dream project at DC, and I tell people this all the time, dream project at DC was, I wanted to take the what I called the token Super Friends. And that was Black
Mm.
Vulcan, Apache Chief. There was four of them: Black Vulcan, Apache Chief.
They
Um,
were all on Young Justice. I can't think of their names
yeah,
though. It's driving me
and
nuts.
and and I wanted to, like, totally rework them, right?
Mm.
And the thing I kept getting was, oh, those characters are problematic and they're stereotypes, and it'll just never work. And I just looked at them every time and I said, do you don't know who you're talking to, do you? Right? If there's one writer who can do it. And what I look at, like, Mark Russell and what he did first with the Flintstones, and he did with
Mm.
Snagglepuss, and he did with Wonder Twins.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, like, you let him do it, and I think he did
Mm.
a phenomenal job. And I was like,
Oh, for real? Yes.
but you're not going to let me do it. You're not going to let me. You're
Mm.
not even going to, like, seriously entertain this. So, it was just one of many things between us over there that, you
Okay.
know.
That makes sense. I want to touch back on something more that you started to get to, because it's like my perfect segue into your love of blaxploitation. You mentioned Eisner,
Mhm.
and you have one Eisner's, which is very like fun to say in that context. And you like mentioned like the passing of the torch and whatnot. And I remember watching I think it was either the milestone episode of the Robert Kirkman thing, or it was the milestone documentary. You guys all kind of had the same thought behind Ebony White.
Yeah.
What is your relationship or thought process, or like when it comes to Ebony White and Will Eisner, when it comes to meeting him and understanding him as a writer? Like, is Ebony just a product of his time in your opinion, or like do you think Will had the best of intentions with that? Like, what is your like
I,
relationship with
I
that
think it's a
that perspective?
combination of things. Obviously, it was a product of the times, and there's a great documentary about Eisner, and
Mm,
I can't remember the title of it off the top of my head because my memory's bad,
right.
but it the ebony subject comes up in that, and he says that, he he was young when he created that character, and he didn't understand how offensive it was and how hurtful it
Mm,
was. And he actually talks a little bit about it in the when he talked about it even more when he did Fagin the Jew, which is one of the last things he did. um,
mm,
and I have a really interesting, the older I get, the more nuanced my look at all of that sort of stuff is. Not just what
mm,
Eisner did with Ebony White, but what performers like Stepin Fetchit or Mantan Moreland did. And so rather than focus on all the negativity of them,
mm,
I look at those things and go, okay, how can we like subvert it? How can we reinvent it? How can we,
mm.
do something and change it without erasing what was actually done? And there's this
Right.
new graphic novel biography of Eisner, and it ends with an excerpt from an interview where he's talking about Ebony, and he says something to the effect of, "It's, I'll leave it to somebody else to to rework that character."
Right.
And I was like, okay, do I contact the not the estate, but like the Will Eisner Foundation and say, hey, let me do something
Mm,
with Ebony? And then I was like, nope. What I'm just going to do is I'll just create my own character that's supposed to be Ebony
mm,
and really like get into it. And because to me, like I I love stuff like that, right?
mm,
I've learned to embrace the things that once offended me and go, okay, how can I undo it? Right? How can
okay.
I? And that was really a driving thing behind this book that Marcus Kwame Anderson and I did, Big Jim and the White Boy. It was really like,
Yes.
let's look at what the problem is, and we don't really. It's not like we're dumping on. We dump on Mark Twain a little bit, but
Right.
it's like it's we're looking at it through a critical lens, and then
Mm,
we're going, okay, what do I want to see? What do I want to
mm,
see with a character like Ebony, right? And
mm,
and I would do something, where it's like, oh, it turns out he's got a genetic disorder with his lips, and that's why they're so big,
mm.
and so I actually made some notes last night. I was
Oh
doing
wow.
some stuff with this Blackenstein project, and I wrote on on the in my notebook, Ebony White question mark, and it was like, okay, it doesn't have to be Ebony, right? But
Mm.
again, that
The
I
spirit of the character, ironically,
the,
pun intended. Like,
yes, exactly. And the thing is there's it's I do have problems with the character, but
mm,
I'm I've also, look, this is how I explain it to people.
mm.
I'm the world's biggest Rick James fan, right? Like I love
Yeah.
Rick James. Rick James did some real ill shit in real life, right?
Yeah.
And so while a lot of other people had to learn how to separate the art from the artist later,
Mm,
right? Problematic stuff. I was like, okay, I still have street songs. I'm gonna still listen to this album. I'm gonna still listen to busting out on the L7. I'm still gonna listen to all that stuff. It doesn't mean I'm going to do any of the things that Rick James did, and I don't
Right.
condone it. And I felt that way with a lot of things. It's um and so I always go, if you're offended by it, don't erase it. Study it,
Mm,
understand the history around it, what was going on at the time,
mm.
understand how this came to be, how it came to thrive and survive, and then just whoop the shit out of it by turning it around.
Okay, so like, does that mean, based off that entire assessment, and that being sort of like the white extreme of trying to give a black character, does that mean in the next 10 years we're gonna see the the David F. Walker interpretation of Captain Durag? Is that like if we want to look at the other end of the spectrum? Like,
I,
if well-intentioned black exploitation is received as "what the heck are you doing?" Are we gonna see Captain Durag come from Solid Comics? Is that what I'm hearing?
maybe, I don't know. I'll tell you what you are going to see coming from Solid Comics soon, though. Um, is I'm going after H.P. Lovecraft, and I'm going after
Oh,
Cthulhu.
oh my gosh.
All of it, all
Oh,
that H.P. Lovecraft
I
stuff.
was just talking with Stephanie Williams about like, you give me, like, it doesn't matter if it's black people in the future, black people in space, or you give me cosmic horror and black folks, I'm there. Like, I've
Yeah,
been loving Erica Schultz's Rat City recently, where it's like cyber spawn all day, every day.
yeah.
So it's like, you give me cosmic horror black folks, I'm there. And her book Roots of Madness has been phenomenal. So you're telling me that, I'm down. And you've piqued my interest.
Yeah,
Oh.
no, it was a I don't know if you've ever talked to John Jennings or not, but it came from a conversation with John Jennings, and I sent him a text. This was less than a week ago, and
Mm.
I said, "Hey, John, what do you think of the monster of Blackenstein versus Cthulhu?" And he wrote back, "Hell yes!" And then I like 30 seconds later, I said, "Do you want to write it with me?" And then the phone rang, and then we started talking about it. And because a lot of it's interesting, the love that people have for Lovecraft, and that dude was like racist as hell, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'm not gonna say you can't love Lovecraft's work, right? Like,
Mm.
that's not gonna be me. I'm not gonna be that person, but I'm gonna say, yeah, we need to, like David Walker and his monsters that are coming for
Mm.
you, Blackenstein being the first of them. um like, H.P. Lovecraft's he's gonna get the ass whooping that that
Okay.
I long wanted to give
See,
him.
like, I would just love, like, as much as I'm loving like Blackenstein, the more I read this book, I would love to just see like brand new characters, like in a world you create dealing with Cthulhu or the Lovecraft environment. Like, that would be even more intriguing, because like, I'm over here, like, I want to just keep seeing the world unfold here, where it's like just this cop and Blackenstein like having beef forever, because there's so many tropes that you put into this that I love that you've thrown in here. And I even love how I can hear almost like the Powerpuff Girls narrator level of like over explanation when it comes to things in the meanwhile, not far from the secret laboratory of Blakenstein. It's like that entire like word bubble is just so on point. The way he over explains the ghetto, I'm like, this feels like some stuff that I'd watch with my great grandfather between episodes of Little House on the Prairie. Like, this feels very on point to be the way it is. And it breaks my heart because some people aren't going to get it. Like, genuinely, you're
Yeah.
looking at this and you feel like what you're referencing so on the nose. And then like, even the part where it's like, oh, I'll never shoot an unarmed man again, and it's like, I wish you would have said unarmed black man there instead of unarmed person, because that would hit the metaphor so on the nail, where it's like, oh, it's so, I love the way you write this so well, because it's so just perfect, and it screams the fact that you can still do black like exploitation so well, because even when the Captain Durag thing happened, people were like, look, black exploitation does mean black exploitation, and it's like, no, there's a way to do it, and I can literally just hand you a whole ass man that does it perfectly, that could have like walked this whole line better than this. And even when old girl was jumping around in a do-rag cape trying to say she had the best of intentions, I'm like, this could have been done so much better. And it's just like, man,
it's
oh.
well, and when it comes to blaxploitation, you got to understand it, and most people don't.
Mm,
Most people's understanding of blaxploitation comes from one of two places. It either comes from the movie "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker," or it
mm,
comes from Black Dynamite, right?
yes.
And so both of those are satires and spoofs of something, and like while my Blackenstein comic is clearly a satire, it's
Mm,
also coming from an understanding of, like, I'm the dude who watches the original Blackula, and
mm,
it's funny because I Shout Factory did a Blu-ray of Blackula
yes.
that I did the audio commentary for. And I think they were expecting me to come in and make jokes. And I was like, no, this movie's not a joke. Like you need to understand how serious this movie is, because first off,
Mm,
Blackula's not the monster. The
yeah.
monster is Dracula, who turns an African prince into a monster. It's a
Mm,
metaphor for the black experience, period, right?
yes.
And then the end, spoiler alert to a movie that was made in 72,
Ah, it's
it
fine.
ends with him getting killed by the police,
Mm.
right? Sure,
Isn't
he's a
that so funny? You
vampire.
pulled the same line, but like put it in the middle of the plot instead of the end of the plot.
Yeah.
Like I love how you did that.
So so yeah, I just it's interesting to me because I see people when they, you know, they think they know what black exploitation is, and they don't, and it just it
Mm,
cracks me up. And you know um I wanted, I've wanted to do a monster story for a very long time. I'm fortunate enough to be working on Bitter Root with Chuck and Sanford, um
yes.
but like that isn't quite scratching the itch,
Your
all
itch.
the itches that I have. And I was like,
That's an interesting thought you just had there. You literally personified hatred turning into monsters.
yeah.
How is that not scratching the itch? I'm curious.
Well, we you see a little bit in Bitterroot, especially with the first three volumes, with the
Right.
character Berg, right?
Yeah.
Because the itch I really want to scratch, that I'm scratching with Blackenstein, is that we, as people of color, and it's not just people of color because it's also queer folks and trans folks, are demonized and turned into monsters by people, right?
Yes.
And you especially you've seen it a lot in the last 10 years, and we all know the names, right? We know who
Mm,
George Floyd is, we know who Breonna Taylor is, we know who Trayvon Martin is, Ahmaud Arbery, right? I could go down the
mm.
list, right?
I'm about to say, yeah,
And
like you kind of hit me real close to home with with this book, and like because I'm from Akron, so I'm like Jalen Walker happened here.
yeah,
So like
yeah,
I went to school with him. I played on the same football team as him. So like when like all this is going down in the book, I'm kind of just sitting there like, oh,
yeah.
this hit me harder than I intended.
And the thing is, and I remember, this is going all the way back to Trayvon Martin, but it goes back even further because we've seen it. This is part of the history of this country, right? There's
Right.
always this moment where, oh, well, this black person did something wrong, right? They and then they build on it, and it could be like, yo, this dude, he jaywalked once, and then the headlines, yo, this guy, this unarmed black man jaywalked once, and you know what they say about people who jaywalk? He was probably jaywalking because he was going to sell some crack cocaine, or because whatever. And that's the thing. They I I say this all the time. We are monsters, right?
Yeah.
Like if and we can either take that monstrosity and like, what do we do with it? That was the thing I was asking myself, and that was sort of what I was trying to get. Part of what we were trying to get at with Bitter Root is, like, again, the character Berg really is, it represents that. But I was like, okay, I can't put all of what I want to put into it because there's two other people on this team, right?
Mm,
And there's what I wanted. There's this thing that I want to do, this thing that I want to say, and there's a way that I want to say it, right?
mm,
And part of that is, again, with a sense of humor that is biting. It's
yeah.
the Richard Pryor style humor, right? Where
Mm,
depending on what kind of mood you're in, you're like, yo, Richard Pryor is, this isn't actually funny. I think I'm gonna
Mhm.
cry now. And
Yeah.
you're from Ohio. You're from,
Mhm.
that's Richard Pryor. I think he Peoria, didn't he? I think he came
I
up
believe so, yeah.
either Peoria or I'm pretty sure. Um, and so this is all this stuff that had been rolling around in my head for a very long time, and
Mhm.
I just have this love of classic monsters, right?
Mhm.
I also have a love of putting subtext in a story and saying more than what's on the surface and surprising people. Um, but there's sometimes you don't want to argue with two other people about what you're going to do or why you're going to do it,
That's
and
fair.
so um, there's some stuff that we're trying to do with Bitterroot that it may happen, it may not happen. We all have conflicting schedules, and but there's some stuff that I want to implement with Blackenstein, not just the character, but this bigger thing that I'm trying to build.
Right, you're building a world, yeah.
Yeah, and but not just a world too. This is the thing, and is that I look at Mike Mignola and what he did with
Mhm.
Hellboy. Eric Powell did it to a certain extent with Goon as well,
Mhm.
where they created these really strong, iconic characters
Right.
that they could have spent their entire careers just doing them, but instead
Mhm.
they like, hey, come work with me, come work with on
Right.
this, and so I knew from the beginning, I'm not going to draw the Blackenstein stories or the other monsters because there's more that are going to be introduced, but I want to, I want to work with a variety of creators.
Mhm.
But then I started realizing, oh, I also want to work with a variety of writers.
Mhm.
And so, John Jennings was one of the first people I approached. I have another friend who has co-written a couple shorts with me, Blackenstein shorts. And, the thing I'm telling the people as I talk to them
Mhm.
is, like, okay, the key is we have a very specific tone that I want to maintain in these stories,
Mhm.
right? So don't be offended if I say, oh yeah, no, this isn't wordy enough.
Mhm.
If I have to go back and tweak the dialogue so that it's this big giant balloon that people don't want to read. um, but I think about, you know I guess goes back to, part of what we were talking about earlier, my origin story. um, you know there's some artists out there that are looking to catch a break,
Mhm.
that are looking to have their first stories published. They're ultimately, their dream is to work at Marvel or DC,
Yeah,
but
I know
it's
a
like,
few of those.
yeah, but it's like, all right, I got a couple bucks in my pocket. You want to draw this 8-page story, and
Mhm.
and and you want to work with a writer who's can be really demanding, so you're going to understand what you might be up
Mhm.
against when you get to Marvel or DC, and you know that's what I would, because I can't, if even if Marvel called me tomorrow and offered me a job, it'd be odd because it'd be a weekend. But if they if they called me and offered me a job, I don't have the juice to pick my artists, right?
Yeah.
And there's always people I want to work with. So so what I'm really saying is I don't have the power to open the doors for anyone at a big publisher, but I
Mhm.
have my own door, and so I can open it for other people with myself, right? Why
Right.
wouldn't I do that? Like that really, we, when I watch your videos that you post, and there's a couple other people, and I'm like, I just sort of smile to myself. I'm like, okay, like they got it down. They're saying the things that I was saying a few years back, and
Mhm.
um, hey, I'm happy that that milestone thing, the other history, whatever,
Mhm.
Dakota incident thing. I'm happy it's doing well, you
Mhm.
know, uh, and I'm happy that everybody who worked on it. And I'll say this to all of them if they listen to this. Yeah, check the accounting. Make sure check your work for hire agreement and make sure you get your royalty check, because if the numbers that DC is saying are true, you will be getting royalty checks unless they
Mhm.
raise the threshold, which they very may well have done, because that's what they don't
Mhm.
tell you is usually the threshold is higher than most books ever get to, right? Um, but you know, if they make a Static Shock movie or Static Shock TV show, y'all ain't gonna get nothing out of that, right? They
Yeah.
and this is where I kind of lock heads with a lot of people, where I'm like, okay, if you want to write this stuff, that's fine. I've done it.
Mm.
I enjoy writing it. But if they turn around and turn it into a movie or TV show, or take something that you've done and they don't pay you, and that's happened to me, and
Mm.
legally they were supposed to pay me, and then you got to fight with them,
Mm.
most of the stuff you're never going to win. You're never going to win that battle.
Well, like that actually, like it brings up a really good point, because like there's been a conversation that I've wanted to pick your brain about, because obviously you've seen me and already other people talk about it. There's the rising sentiment from a lot of like either indie creators or like just fans in general, that we shouldn't even be trying to fight for a seat at the table. We should just go make our own table. That we should just make our own indie comics. We shouldn't try to sit up with Batman, Superman, etc. Because the campaign that I'm doing with DC So White, or what other people are doing to like raise
I
awareness.
saw that.
People,
I was
yeah,
like, oh man, he's going there.
it's been bothering me like crazy, and it's just like I would love to know your perspective on it. Where it's like, do we make our own table? Do we fight for a seat? Well, like as someone who has been able to pitch ideas to like bigger studios, and honestly, I keep waiting for the day that you, Chuck, and Sanford just open an imprint at Image. I keep waiting for that happens, where y'all can open doors for people. Where it's like, what is your perspective on the idea? Should we even attempt to fight for a table? Should we make our own tables? Like, because a lot of people are saying that like trying to appeal to the white audience means nothing. Or like, what is your thought on that whole thing?
Well, I think that the reality is it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both,
Mm,
right?
exactly.
And so I use um, they did the Batman Deadpool crossover
Mm,
recently, right? And I had something like 20 variant covers, and it's like, okay, if you ran out and you bought all 20 of those variant covers, you spent a lot of money.
yeah.
Did you need to spend and now I'm talking, and I'll talk specifically to black fans, although I this goes to all fans, right?
Mm,
It doesn't matter. I don't care what ethnicity you are, what race, what gender, what your sexual preferences. I don't care any of that, right?
mm,
If
mm,
you spend all of your money buying one comic with 20 different covers, then all you've done is put money in Warner Brothers' pocket, right?
mm,
And so TJ Sterling has built his table. Jason Reeves has
mm,
built his table. Ray Height has built his table. I built my table, right? And then you can go to and then there's the other table that I built, which is with Sanford and Chuck, and that's a little bit
mm.
higher up. I'm not saying that it's and very clear. I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody else or that we're
Right. No,
better than
like you
anybody
can
else.
have multiple tables.
Yeah,
Carpentry is a whole thing.
yeah, but we just happen to be in a position that a privilege that not
Mm,
all indie creators have, right? But Rodney Barnes has built his table, right? And
yes.
so there's more than enough stuff to support, and you can buy the stuff you like, right?
Mm,
Now for me, I my part of my story is sort of similar to yours in that I stopped reading comics for nearly 10 years. There's a couple
yeah.
things that I picked up here and there. When Milestone first broke in 93, I was like, let me see what this is about. But at
Mm,
that point, I had pretty much walked away from comics completely. Um, and what I would do is like maybe once a year, I would go into a comic shop. Oh, what's going on,
mm,
right? And then in the late 90s, this generation of talent came on the scene, and it included Greg Rucka, Matt Fraction, Kelly Sue DeConnick,
mm,
Brian Bendis, and I hadn't even met any of them yet. All of them brought me back into comics. I fell in love with comics all over again because of them. And then I met them, and I was like, yo, now here we are 20 years later, we're all friends. 25 years
mm,
later, we're friends. But you know, it was like it's like, so I've read Rodney's Marvel work, right? Rodney Barnes'
mm.
Marvel work, and it's good. I've also read Philadelphia, and it's better,
Ooh, that's right
right?
next to your book
Yeah,
over here on my shelf.
and I'm so appreciative when people tell me, "Oh, I love Power Man and Iron Fist," or "I love Cyborg." I really am. I'm appreciative of that,
Mm.
but I'm also like, that's not my best work, right? And
Mm.
it's like, well, what's your best work? And I can put down either something like Bitter Root, you know, or I can put down some of my self-published stuff like The Death of Bobby Hart or The
Yes.
Hated, and I see people and they're like, it's almost like they shut down. It's like, like in an episode of Star Trek when they give an android a question that can't be answered. Oh, that's not compute.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm like, why can't you have both, right? Why can't you, you know, I read Brian K. Vaughan's Batman stuff and I read
Mm-hmm.
Runaways, but
Oh,
Saga,
yes.
come on, right? And I think for a lot of us creators, that's one of the struggles that we have. But Greg Greg Elise and Newton Lilavoie and there are some amazing indie creators out there.
Mm-hmm. The one like
And
it's so funny. Like I have a friend who was like wanting to get into indie stuff, but she loves women like creators and stuff.
yeah,
And I'm like, yo, look, I can hand you Captain Marvel. Like I know you're trying to read a little bit more Marvel, you want to read Carol, but
mhm,
like I can also hand you Kelly Sue's Bitch Planet, and you can have a ball.
yeah,
And she
hands
was like,
down.
"Oh, really?" And I handed her the trade, and she was loving it. So it's
Yeah,
like you can, and like I'll steal a phrase from Ernie Blair Without Fear. You can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. Like you can love
exactly.
both things at the same time.
And so it's crazy to me when I was a kid, when I was a kid, um, I was a Marvel kid, right? And we're
Mm-hmm.
talking 70s and 80s. And I would read a DC comic if someone handed it to me or gave it to me for free, but I wasn't about to buy a DC comic because I was Marvel. Make mine Marvel. And then one day I happened to walk into a convenience store and I saw New Teen Titans, and I saw that George Perez had done the cover, and I love George Perez. I picked it up, and the next thing you know, I was like, "Yo, I'm DC now too," because
Mm-hmm.
what Marv Wolfman and George Perez, those two creators, brought me to DC,
Mm-hmm.
and they held me there long enough that then I started picking up some of the other books, and this is early to mid '80s, and this is before Frank Miller did Dark Knight, but there were some amazing comics that I discovered, and to think, okay, as a kid, again, say I'm 13, 14 years old, and again I'm diehard Marvel until I'm not,
Right.
but I know cats in their 30s and 40s and 50s that are still acting that way, right? And it's
It's
like,
crazy, yeah. Like I always tell people because I had Batman the Colt, and then my dad got me Priest's Captain America Falcon and Isabella's '90s Black Lightning. And
yeah,
people always like, "Are you a Marvel guy or a DC guy?" I tell people I'm a bad parent. I like both my children equally, but I
yeah,
also hate them equally because they drive me nuts. And it's just like I definitely understand what you're saying because I remember like reading both those books, and then monthly I was collecting Jeff Johns' Teen Titans, and then I would dive into Marvel and trade every once in a while at the library. So like
yeah,
you definitely dip in and dip out whenever you feel it's necessary.
yeah. And again, so I was. Here's the thing. Again, I'm older and I'm dating myself a little bit, but I'm when I'm coming up as a kid, it was as it was now. It was Marvel and DC. Boom. But these little other publishers would pop up, and so there was Pacific, and there was First Comics, and there was Kamiko, then there was Dark Horse, and
Valiant popped up around that time.
yeah, and I was like, I was getting this stuff right. Um, I was a huge ElfQuest fan,
Oh,
right?
okay.
And it was because again, I met them in the late '70s, like when the first issue
Right.
came out. I met them at a comic convention, and it was like, wait a
Wow.
minute, there's people that are making their own comics, like and getting them printed. So I'm like, maybe 12, figuring that out, and so I'm buying Dark Horse whenever it came out. Howard Chaykin, he goes off and he does this comic called American Flag, which just felt like you were not supposed to be reading it, right? And then this guy, Matt Wagner, comes out. First, he comes out with a comic called Grendel, which is
Mm-hmm.
it feels like, oh, he's been watching some of those same cartoons that I've been watching that are from Japan. And then he comes out with Mage, and it was like, you know, Mage blew my mind. Now, but meanwhile, Frank Miller is doing Daredevil, and it's like, well, you can get away with this. You can do this kind of thing, and so here I am. I'm at a relatively young age, seeing it, paying attention, these different publishers, seeing the stuff, blossom and grow, and not being loyal to any one publisher. I'm being more loyal to creators than I am
Yes.
to publishers. Um, and and if there's anything that has, I think, informed me more than just those early comics that I picked up was the stuff that I was discovering, especially when comic shops started popping up in the like direct market stores. And um, Don McGregor and Marshall Rogers did a comic called Detectives Inc. And it was like, what am I looking at? Like, and it wasn't just because there was nudity in it and profanity.
Yeah.
It was like, there's no superheroes in this.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's another conversation we've been having recently, is like moving away from cape shit, moving away from that idea that not every story has to be a superhero.
And I think that part of it is there's a generation of fans who were the sort of the outsiders, the nerds, and like they want to still be the outsiders and the nerds, but they also want to be in control, right? A lot of comics fans are the kids who were bullied who grow up to be bullies, right? And if you've ever been bullied, you know how terrible it feels. And sometimes we get into a position where we become the bully and we don't realize it, right? It's why should you ever tell somebody, what they should be reading and what they, and how, and but why should you also be closing your mind to it? Because I can tell you right now, if I were to name the top 10 comic stories that I've read in the last 15, 20 years, I'm pretty sure there's only one superhero title in it, and that would be Matt Fraction's run on Hawkeye. To me, that was it. Everything else I've read that I've loved has made me go, I couldn't do this. I don't even know where this writer came up with this in their imagination, and how did they convey this to an artist to draw. It's all stuff that that a lot of folks haven't heard of, and it's like, the crazy thing is I've been to excuse me, I've been to stores, comic book stores, where it's like that's all they carry is Batman and Superman and Spider-Man. Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to give them my money, right? Because it's like, you're not. This is the comic industry is, and the fan base, a lot of the fan base, not all of them, is like this weird world in which ambition and growth and is discouraged. It's almost like we don't want this. You did a video the other day on pre-ordering comics, and I'm watching it and I'm just like laughing and getting real mad, right? Because it's like, we've been having this conversation now, right? Probably longer than you've been alive, like trying to explain, and as someone who has had every title I did for Marvel got canceled early, and it got canceled early because
I was real mad because of that. Like that. I think that was the first time I recognized the struggle, because like that was when I first came back to reading.
Yeah.
I was pulling Power Man and Iron Fist, Sam Wilson Captain America, Miles Morales, but then Cyborg and Teen Titans.
Yeah.
And I watched as just the chips started to go, and then Rodney took over Falcon, and that ended, and then you would transition to Luke Cage, and then that ended, and I just sat there like, what's going on? And it was just really interesting, to
Yeah.
see. Once I talked to comic book shop owners, they started to explain everything to me. I was like, how do people not understand this? And then like I even know like Wednesday warriors that don't know how this stuff works, and it blows my mind.
And it's I happen to be I live, I live in Portland, the other Portland in Oregon, not the one in Maine. And we have like, honestly, we have some of the best shops ever, right? If you ever get a chance to come to Portland, I'll take you to like 4 or 5 different shops. They'll blow your mind, right? Because like some
Okay.
regions will have like the best shop. We
Mm.
have the best shop times five, right? And
Okay.
and so I can, and this is how good our shops are. I can walk into a store and go, I don't have to pre-order anything. I go, hey, I'm looking for XYZ, and they'll be like, "Oh, we don't have it. We can order it for you, or hey, let me call this other store." And they will
Mm.
call and go, "Hey, do you have XYZ? Yeah, could you set that aside?" They don't even
Mm.
say who it's for, right? That's
Right.
that's the way it should be, right?
Right.
And
I have shops like that here because like here in like how like Northeast Ohio. I'm lucky. I have like 2 shops in my hometown, and then like 20 minutes from me, I have a shop like that where like if I can't find a book here, or if I forgot to add a pre-order, I'll call Bills and be like, hey, do you got this? Or I'll be there in 20 minutes. Like it's definitely like that. But some people have like you have an hour to get to a shop, and that's like their
some
only option
you can't. There's
sometimes.
some places you can't even drive an hour, man. I
Yeah.
mean, like there are some. I don't want to. I was in where was I? I was in Louisiana. I was in Baton Rouge, but the comic shop wasn't in Baton Rouge. It was right. I think it was right outside of Baton Rouge, and I don't know if it's still there. And I don't want to shit all over them. But it was one
Mm.
that it was a comic shop that also sold sports cards and Funko Pops and all that
Mm.
sort of stuff. And it was like I went in there and I was like, they literally don't have anything that I would buy, and they didn't
Mm.
have anything. And I remember my cousin brought me in there, and she's like, she says to the guy, "This is my cousin, and he writes whatever I was writing at the time." And the guy was like, well, "I don't give a shit," And it was like,
What?
and I was like, it was so unwelcoming. And I think to
Yeah.
myself, like, okay, if you say you're a parent and you take your kid to see, you know, before a couple of years ago it was Black Panther, a few years back it was Black
Mm.
Panther, but now it's like Fantastic Four last year, right?
Right.
And you walk into a comic shop because your kid has just seen Fantastic Four and they love it. Or maybe they've just discovered Star Trek and they love it, or
Mm.
Godzilla and they love it, because all these properties have comics, right?
Yeah.
You should be able to walk into a store and as a parent and say, "Oh, my kid really loves Fantastic Four. What, where can I start? What should I get
Mm.
them?" Now, there's two problems with that. There's not that many good comics out there that's a good jumping off place, right? This has been a
Yeah.
big fight for me, right? And it's like if you took all the money that they spent, that Marvel and DC spent, and we'll just say those two companies, on just reprinting the same things over and over again. Well, now we're going to do Absolute. Now we're going to do All In and Ultimates and blah 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 blah. And it's like, why don't you just have a really user friendly line that is
Mm.
like that? Instead of changing Nick Fury through the whole line, why don't you just have a
Mm.
line of comics that is directly tied to the movies, right?
I'm literally planning a video like that right now where it's like if you can have the absolute universe, fine, no big deal. But like why not have let Wade and Mora just make a world's finest universe where
Yeah,
it's like it's friendly to your Silver Age older readers, but it's a good jumping on point for kids. It gives you like somewhere to play those old ideas while also like letting you foster new ideas in your mainline universe. Like it would make so much more sense where you have and like they've tried to make movie tie-in books, but like they never go anywhere. I can understand from Marvel's perspective, they don't want to keep like barking up that tree, but that would be such a great way to pull new fans in.
it's they, and when they try it, honestly, they don't do it well, right?
Mhm.
And because it seems like they immediately go, "Oh, we've got to make the fans happy. We got to make the fanboys happy, the Wednesday Warriors happy." And let me tell you something. the Wednesday Warriors aren't the ones that are making Captain Underpants and Raina Tegelmeyer and Dogman multi-million-dollar sellers. They're not the ones that are making Shonen Jump and all that manga stuff million-dollar sellers, right? So there's an audience out there. And if you're too stupid, and I'm saying this directly to you, Marvel and DC, if you're too stupid to figure out how to find that audience by creating new stuff instead of repackaging the same old stuff, then that's on you, right?
Right, and like it's crazy. Like I remember recently, like you had Moon Girl selling out of a Scholastic for years.
Yes,
you had that like hand over fist. You have a black woman in STEM, but making you money hand over fist. Why wouldn't you keep that going? And we ain't seen them in her in years. Why? Because she's an Inhuman, and y'all blew it with the Inhumans. Like, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, this is, and here's the thing, man. We're grown ass adults having this conversation, which is like, it's kind of fun that we can have it, but from a like beyond the fan person, the fanboy, fangirl standpoint, like when we're talking about business and we're talking about opportunities and we're talking about, and this is where I really get up on my high horse. We're talking about literacy, right? Like we're facing an illiteracy epidemic in this country right now. Kids don't, not just kids, because I'm a college professor. I teach college and I'm meeting kids who can't read, right?
Yeah. There's kids in my day job that come in like brand new, like, so I work in HVAC, like it's my day job. There's kids who come in, don't even know how to sign their own name. And I'm like, bro, what are you doing?
And so like, I'm in a position as a comic book writer to try to help change that, right? Like when I was a kid, there were, like maybe you don't want to read Archie comics, maybe you're really into Spider-Man, but you're not a good reader. Like they had what it was called, a series called Spidey Super Stories, which was, it was meant for like the kids that watched Electric Company, right? How hard is it to do that? And they've done a couple Spidey Super Stories collections recently with newer creators, and not even sold those that well because they don't know what they're doing. I mean, they got Jerry Kraft, who, good friend of mine. He's done New Kid, the New Kid series for HarperCollins, New Kid, Class Act, and Class Trip. Right. And this guy is one of the most popular middle grade graphic novel creators out there. Right. He's running with Dave Pilkey and Raina Tegelmeyer, and like they're having trouble selling the stuff that Jerry worked on. Right.
That's insane.
Like what's wrong with you? And I know what's wrong with them because I've sat in the meetings and I've been like, yo, you guys are really, there's a lot of people working at these companies who are older, and they're just riding it out till retirement time, till they can, cash in their pension. And in the meantime, I liked what Ta-Nehisi Coates was doing with Black Panther. But there should have been, with every Marvel movie that has come out, there should be a series that is like meant for young people to get them, like, not only to bring them in, not only to indoctrinate them, right? Do I have to explain the basics of how to be a good dope dealer, right? Because that's what dope dealers do. So
it's insane, and it blows my mind because it's like I would even think like there was a great thing that Evan Narcisse did like right when the movie was coming out. It was like a really like easy jumping on book. It was super easy to understand, but it's like, why aren't you creating gateways for people? Like there was a great Miles Morales like young adult novel recently that I saw
that Jason Reynolds wrote, right?
Yeah. I thought that was such a great idea, but it's like I don't see a commercial for it. I don't see social media pushes for these things. And it blows my mind that like we aren't trying to think on a grander scale when it comes to like you have all these influencers, all these people like myself, like Ernie, all these individuals that could be so easy. Like, hey, pimp this out. We'll give it to you for free. And it would solve half the problem, like right there. And they're not thinking about that. It blows my mind. And it's just like, even with like the conversation around marginalized characters, they're like already going, hey, here's DC Pride variants, and I'm like, do you know how many queer creators like myself or people that I know that would kill for that opportunity to talk about those books, and you're not taking advantage of that? And it's just like, it blows my mind, and I wonder if there's ever going to come a point where we have the conversation of, oh, you were only doing DC fandom because you were forced to, not because you wanted to innovate. When are we going to innovate and have those conversations of innovation in the comic book industry?
I don't know, man. I wonder that a lot of the times myself, and I'm getting older and grumpier with each passing day, you know? And I feel like there are it's comics was an industry that was built by outsiders, primarily outsiders. You going back to guys like Will Eisner, Jack Kirby, this was at a time when anti-Semitism was keeping guys that are trying to get
Yes.
work in the illustration world. They weren't getting work, so they all these young Jewish guys. I mean, Will Eisner was a teenager when he got his
Yes.
big break, and so the comic industry was built by primarily a lot of Jewish artists and
Yes.
writers, and then by Jewish mobsters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that the mobster mentality still
Hasn't really evolved.
hasn't really evolved, right? Um, and look, I'm guilty. I still buy comics. I could just stop
Mm.
if I wanted to, but I still love the medium. I still love. I just went to the store the other day, and there was a new collection of EC stuff that was focusing on Jack Davis and Wally Wood, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna buy this book. Fantagraphics put it out, and it's beautiful. And I picked up, God, I can't remember what I know I picked up at least one Marvel or one DC comic, but it's drawing a blank, and I still buy the
Mm.
stuff, but it's mostly independent stuff that I buy,
Mm.
um, and a lot of it is like, okay, and I am very much a trade person, um,
Mm.
but I'm on Kickstarter backing stuff regularly, and
Yeah.
and really trying to support, because that's where the most innovative stuff is. And I'm not just saying it because
Yes.
that's where I'm at. I'm
Mm.
looking at and my friends are there. TJ
Mm.
Sterling is doing stuff, and Jason Reeves is doing stuff, and Ray Height is doing stuff, and Madeline, whose last name I'm drawing a blank on, but she does the she's got the Pendragon book, but it's the Boston
Mm.
Metaphysical Society, right? I
Right.
love that sort of stuff, and you're not going to see most of that stuff in the comic book store, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's like there are some people that are like trying really hard to innovate and things like that. Like, say what you will about Image, but you guys have been cooking over there trying to have new ideas and whatnot. Like Ignition is a big one that I've seen,
Yeah,
breaking down barriers, telling new different stories. Or Invader just ended one of their Kickstarters. It's like we're seeing a push for not as much cape stuff and more doing innovative ideas to challenge people's perspectives. But you're right, Kickstarter is where a lot of it is, but I would love to like get your perspective on this. Unless you have like good social media presence, Kickstarter is where a lot of like books go to die. It seems like when you look at that comics tab, it feels like just a wall of images, text, and
yeah,
like honestly a lot of naughty stuff. Like where it's just you can't really penetrate that wall and find where stuff is, where people can actually find good stories. Like, how has that been? Have you like talked to different creators about that idea that like unless you are a bigger name, trying to get yourself started on Kickstarter is a battle? Because I got an email in my box this morning that a Kickstarter that I backed like 2-3 years ago, the physical I'm never going to get because they ran out of money and all they could give us left is the digital. It's like that is a
yeah.
factor that people run into a lot.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of issues. This is at some point I will have to come back on and we can talk about this. It's an ongoing conversation. I mean, part of it is there's a lot of people on Kickstarter who go there and don't understand what they're doing and what their
Mm.
obligation is, right? So when every campaign I've done, the at the very least the book is completed, right?
Right.
Maybe it's the files aren't formatted properly, but the book is
Mm.
done, right? I'm not going to come to anybody and say, "Hey, give me money for a comic that none of the pages are drawn or only half of the pages are
Mm.
drawn," right? And I've run into problems with some of the stuff that I've done before. The first two Kickstarters I've done were for comics that the second issue still hasn't come out, and I've learned a lot of valuable lessons. Um, Kickstarter, to me, I treat Kickstarter the same way I treat going to a convention. And when any convention I go to, I spend most of my time in either Artist Alley, or if they have like an indie publisher section, that's where I spend my time. That's where I spend my money. And I encourage people to do the same thing, right? But I
That's what I
also,
did on Fan Expo Cleveland last week. All I was like indie stuff. I went and got 2 books signed
yeah,
over at the major booths, and then I was indie the whole time. So I
yeah.
definitely agree with that.
And so the thing is like, I look at when I'm checking out Kickstarters and I'm deciding who to back, I look at all kinds of things. I will look to see how many other campaigns have they done. Have they fulfilled their orders? Who did somebody recommend them to me? Um, the thing is that comics, while they are ridiculously easy to make, they're also ridiculously difficult to make, right? And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And printing stuff costs a lot of money, and shipping stuff costs a lot of money. And if you're not prepared for that, then you're not you might get into trouble, right? And so, but the thing is, and I had a conversation with someone the other night getting ready to do their first Kickstarter, and I said, what you really need to do is you need to sit down and spend hours going through the comic campaigns. And I said, and pay attention to the ones that are doing poorly. Don't look at the ones that are doing well, because you're going to go crazy trying to figure out how to replicate that. But you can look at stuff and go, what are they doing wrong? And there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, Ray Height and I joke about this all the time, because it's like there's a lot of sexploitation books out there, right? A lot of books with like big breasted women, big
I call it
breasted.
gooner bait. Like half of Kickstarter feels like gooner bait half the time.
Yes. And I'm always saying to Ray, I'm like, yo, we got to do one of these titles, right? Like I'm not kidding. I'm this close. Like if I did
Blaxploitation gooner bait, like it writes itself.
And the thing is like, oh, then I could use that money to pay for the other things that I want to do. The key is I'm not seeing that many of those people. They're just doing it over and over again, right? Sometimes it's demoralizing to see that. But there's some folks out there like Charlie Stickney is doing some amazing stuff. There's creators out there, and it's not that different than going to. I mean, if you go to a comic book store, you're not seeing the best comics out there necessarily. You're seeing what that look. This is what you talk about in your videos. You're seeing what the retailer thinks they're going to be able to sell. They know they can sell Spider-Man. They know they can sell X-Men. Do they know they can sell Boston Metaphysical Society? Nope. They don't know.
And like I joke all the time that I want to be like a comic shop owner one day because I could fix the whole problem. But I was on like someone wanted to interview me, and they were more of a Magic the Gathering person, like a D&D person. They still wanted to have a conversation.
Yeah.
I was like, imagine being a game store owner and having to literally every week it's pre-release, and you have to figure out how many boxes of every set of Magic you need to have every week, because every person's going to be a different kind of fan.
Yeah.
That's the job like comic shops have to deal with every week, and I don't envy it, but some people just do it badly, and it's very sad to see.
Some people do it badly, and the sad thing is some people who do it really well are still struggling. It's again, when I was a kid, you could get a comic for 25 cents, right? So my cousin and I could go up to the newsstand, and if we each had 50 cents in our pocket, it meant we walked away with a total of 4 comics. I'd get 2, he'd get 2, but his 2 were mine, my 2 were his, and we would swap and we go back and forth. And you don't see a lot of people doing that, right? And so if someone's going and they're buying all 20 variants of Batman Deadpool, bagged and boarded, and they're not even opening them, reading them, right? I'm like, there's you can tell sometimes when you're at a convention and people come up and they bring stuff to get signed, you can tell they ain't ever read the book. right?
Man, ooh,
And
I have a perfect story of that. Yeah, I remember I was at a con. I was at Hall of Fame City Con a few months back. I was looking for Mr. Terrific's first appearance, and like
mhm,
all these vendors are looking at me like I'm a scalper. I'm like, no, you don't understand. That's for me. Like
yeah,
that's going on my wall. They're like, oh, okay, then we'll have a conversation with you. It's like
yeah,
it's a different dichotomy when you actually are able to see who's a fan and who's just doing it to flip it. Like I even saw, I was talking about comic shops. There was somebody who was like advertising they were going to sell copies of Nectar for Vault Comics, and that's a high dollar book that had a #1 recently because of the writer and because there's this whole trend going around #1s. And I was like, oh, so you're doing it for the money, you're not doing it for the love of the game, and that's a concern.
yeah. And even it's interesting because when I was putting together, I've been working on Blackenstein for a long time, and at one point I had several variant covers put together.
Mm.
Um, and then I made the decision that I'm only going to have one cover. There's actually two covers because there's the black and white silent edition of the book,
Yes.
um, but there's only one cover, and part of that was because like I want you to read this. I don't
Mm.
want you buying five versions. You know, yeah, it'd be nice for me to make that money, but what I'd rather you do is just buy one copy of my
Mm.
comic and then go out and buy some more comics from someone else, right? Because I'm
Right.
that's the socialist in me, right? That's how I
Mm.
think about it. And it's hilarious to me because um I mean comics are meant to be read, right? They're
Mm.
not meant to be um slabbed and then and look, if you think that your comic collection is going to be worth something so much someday that you can buy a house, good luck. Maybe it will, but chances are pretty good when you go to sell um, that collection, you ain't going to make that kind of money, right? And the
Mm.
thing that drives me bonkers, because and I was just talking, I've been talking about this a lot lately. We don't get creators don't get that money, right? Like, and
Mm.
I know some creators who like they brag on, hey man, there's a copy of my book on eBay and it's going for $1,000. I'm like, bro, are
Mm.
you getting any of that thousand? Because like then what's there to brag about, right? Like
Mm.
you're that's one more person that's exploiting you, right? It's
Mm.
bad enough, you know, that you're part of the sharecropping mentality of
Mm.
of the mainstream of the big two, but you're bragging on the fact that a book that didn't sell enough copies for you to get royalties off of,
Mm.
someone might be able to sell that for $1,000 on eBay and you're not going to get a dime of that.
It's crazy, and it's like I'm weird. Like I find myself in a middle ground where like I will bag and board my stuff because I like having a collection, but then
Yeah,
I'm walking around the house with my iPad. Like even with your Kickstarters, I have always been like one physical, one PDF because that way I can walk around the house and like do what I need to do and like sit in my bed and read. But I also like knowing that it's safe, it's protected. I like
I get
that
it.
balance where it's like I like because I have a beat up copy of Sam's first appearance 117, and I hate how beat up it is because back then they didn't care about stuff. It's just all
Yeah,
beat up. But it's like I have I still have my copy of all the stuff from Chuck. I have
yeah.
I have all of your books, and it's like they're protected, they're safe, and they're in my box. But I have my digital copies that I can whip out at any time because I love reading your guys' work. It's a
No,
balance,
and
and not everyone knows how to walk that line.
no, they don't. And but it's is what it is, man. And I, as much as I'll complain about it, my biggest thing is like just read the books. That's that's
Exactly.
that's what for me anyway. That's why I put them out, right?
Mm.
That's why I put my heart and soul into it, and it's why I self publish. I
Mm.
one of my favorite creators is Kyle Baker, and I was talking to him last year. I ran into him at a convention, and like Kyle Baker is one of the greatest talents this industry has ever seen. Why I Hate Saturn is in the top 10 greatest graphic novels, American graphic novels anyway. I don't want to open it up on a global scale, but it's amazing.
Mm.
And Kyle Baker's self-publishing now, right?
Mm.
And I was like, we were talking about why, and I was like, and I'd been dabbling with self-publishing, and I really thought about it, and I was like, yo, if it's if if Kyle Baker is doing it, then there should be no shame in it. I know some creators who say to me, "Why are you doing this? Why are you self publishing stuff?" And I say, look, um, there's publishers that only want to pay me $10 to $20 a page, and they only want to pay an artist $50 to $60 a page, and then they don't have a marketing budget, and they're not going to be able to get it in most retailers, and then they also want to own either the property outright or they want the controlling percentage and they want the right to shop it. And no, I'm not doing that. You don't
Love
get,
that.
if I was a recording artist, you wouldn't get my masters. You don't get my publishing rights. And I've created characters for Marvel, for DC, and look, I've joined the Jack Kirby, club, right? I've
Mm,
joined the Comics Will Break Your Heart club. I've joined that club where it's like, yo, my lawyer's going to have to make the calls, right? And I'm going to have to fight. And I've had people tell me, you should just be thankful that your stuff got published by them. And I'm like, yeah, that's like telling someone who's been enslaved, oh, you should be thankful that your master is feeding you, right?
mm,
I
ooh.
Yeah. So I look, man, I get
Oh,
I
I'm
get I get
loving
worked
this.
up, man. I get worked
No,
up.
no, I love it, and like like, I'll even like say this. The reason, like, the other reason, besides even like the original reason why I stopped talking about comics for a long time, I kind of got tired of being like angry black man yells at white people about like why the industry needs to be better,
Yeah.
and it got exhausting. And like even now I'm coming back, like even like you said, it's demoralizing. It feels as if we're never seeing change, we're never seeing any growth in the industry, and it's the same thing over and over again. It feels like we're on Groundhog Day on crack, and it's like we
Yep.
could be better if we just took a little bit of time and thought about some different things. And it's like you've broken ground to where you're doing historical graphic novels. You're doing more for the industry than most people, where you're trying to show that we can be a true medium than not just do, oh, Superman for the thousandth time, like Batman for the thousandth time. You're actually trying to add depth and perception to what we do, and it's like that's why I love being like an amateur comic historian, because I love seeing everything that you do, everything what people like Dennis Cowan and Dwayne did, like the work that y'all have put into this industry means so much, and it's like, why can't people, like, I wish I could just take off my eyes and put it in other people's heads and be like, see the truth. Like I made the joke in the same video you're talking about, where like I feel like Layla Miller. I feel like I'm walking around waking people up and showing them the truth. If only I could just like do it more often, or I could get Emma Frost to open my scope a little bit to where I can wake more people up, because it feels as if more people understood, we would be a better medium. And I made the joke earlier. I would love like for you to just be the king of open doors over an Image, where y'all can just have a whole imprint. Like if Jeff Johns could do it, then so could David and Sanford, and like more things could change. Like why hasn't that been a conversation?
Yeah. It's Well, that's a whole other conversation for why that hasn't been a conversation. Um,
Mm,
but it's like I'm doing my own little thing, and if it grows, it grows. And at the bottom line with a lot of the stuff is it costs money to do this stuff, and
yeah.
and and again, but it's not just having the money to do it. It's getting the retailers. You were talking about Ignition, and they've got some really good titles out there. But
Mm.
I'd be curious to know, like, for real, how many retailers are actually carrying Ignition books.
Yeah,
You
it's been a
know,
battle even over here. Like I've had to like tell people, you need to carry this. Like you need to try this. Like if I hadn't have said something, like my main LCS would have never picked it up. Like other than my copies for Stephanie for Roots of Madness, they'd have never picked it up, and that's
yep.
crazy to me.
And you see a company like Distillery, they've hit pause
Mm,
on what they're putting out, and it's like, and that's all quality stuff. So
right.
it's there's so many factors involved. And so again, to me, it's like, there's a time when it felt like Comixology was providing a sense of hope,
Yeah,
and now nothing.
they got
I mean,
gobbled up.
yeah, there's I don't know how many people go to Global Comics, right? I don't
Mm,
I know more people who read stuff on God, I can't even think of what it's called. It's the webtoons. I know more people that read
Yeah.
comics on webtoons than go to Comixology, or not Comixology, go to Global Comics, right? So
Right. And like Sweet Shop's still in beta, so they're not fully out yet to where they can be
yeah,
a thing. But everyone's very hopeful about what Sweet Shop and Bindings is doing. But at the same time, it's like it's crazy to me that people don't see digital as more of a hopeful option, because that's why I was just having a conversation in my comment section before we started, where someone was like, I'm in a different country. I
yeah.
love this medium and I can't support these books, and I constantly see them be canceled. And it's like, I feel for you, dog. I feel for you.
I feel the same way. There's a lot of stuff out of Europe that it's like, and some of it isn't even available in English, and so I like buy it to look at the art, but I can't even read it, and
Uh-huh.
it's a frustrating thing. And so, but here we are doing it, right? Here we are either making it or reading it, and still loving it, and still struggling, and still going, okay. I woke up this morning and I was like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to work on my comics, right? I'm going to, and
Right.
that's what I did. And I forgot to run to the pharmacy to pick up a prescription, which I'll do
Oh.
tomorrow. But it's it's just my blood pressure medication. Who
Oh.
needs it, you know? um, but yeah, we just do what we got to do. We do what we got to do, because for some of
Mm,
us, it's like it's in our soul, right? It's like
mm.
without it, where am I going to be? So
Right. Like
um,
even when I fell out of love with it, there were still books that I still went and picked up from the LCS because I needed this medium. This medium means so
yes,
much to me. Like like I was even I watched a video from Brandon Easton recently where he was frustrated by the lack of support from Black comic fans. And it's
yeah,
like, bro, I was picking up Mr. Miracle, but the
yeah,
problem was fans didn't see your Mr. Miracle as viable because it wasn't Tom King's. And that's a whole conversation in its own right, where imposter syndrome sinks in on that level from the fan base, where
yeah,
they don't even want to look at your book, that they compare it to other books, and that's a
yeah.
whole different conversation in its own right.
And it's like, well, why can't you read both versions of Mr. Miracle? Why can't I
Mm,
know Brandon and I know Tom. I like both of them, both as human beings and writers, right? Read both of them, right? And um yeah, it's all
mm.
it's enough
So
to
so
make a grown
like,
man cry.
oh man, and it's just like, I like obviously we've touched on it, like
Yeah.
we like dabbled in the conversation of the monster of Blackenstein, not to be confused with Blackenstein, but I love saying it every time. It's so funny. Because I've seen the original Blackenstein. My dad showed it to me. So like when you make that joke, I'm sitting there like, he knew, and it's funny. And then I watched your interview with Word Bubble, and you referenced that you've seen it, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
he gets it. He
Yeah.
understands the struggle, and it's so funny when I hear that every time. So it's like, like give people the elevator pitch. Why should they care about this book? Like obviously blaxploitation, obviously with the conversation about Catherine Durag, but
Yeah.
like why should they care about this book? Because I love it. I'm very happy with my purchase now that I've read it. But like, why should other people care about this?
Well, it's in the tradition of the classic monster stories that so many of us love. Whether it's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or James Whale's 1931 Frankenstein, or Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Right? It's a Frankenstein story, um,
Mm,
but it's also a blaxploitation story, and but it's also a satire of all of that
mm,
stuff. Right? And if you are a fan of comics, especially from the 70s, as I am, um, then it's also a little bit of that. So it's a monster story with a twist. It's a comedy, and I'm bad at pitching stuff. I really am. So,
No, that's
uh,
fine. I
but
wanted to give you your shine because I could talk
yeah,
history with you for hours, but I still
yeah,
want to make
yeah.
sure you get your shot to tell people about this book.
But it's something that's really near and dear to my heart, and I like. Let me see. Where do I have? Like right here. I've got this collection of Morbius. Right. I've got both of these, and I've been reading a lot of my old Marvel '70s horror titles. I just love this stuff, man. And for the longest time, I always wanted to do. I wanted to do what I would call my take of a classic monster story, right?
Mm,
But I also had this idea that I wanted to tell a story again that had some socio-political resonance without it being too heavy-handed. Um,
mm,
And then one day it all sort of came to me. I truly hated the movie Blackenstein, the 1973 movie. It's god awful. I hate that
Yeah,
movie
it's
so
rough.
much that I've spent years thinking about how much I hate it and what I would do if I ever did a Black Frankenstein story. And one day, about 4 or 5 years ago, I couldn't sleep, and I was like, I was laying in bed. This is how my brain works. I'm laying in bed. I was like, man, I can't sleep, and I hate Blackenstein. Hey, it would be a good idea. And then grabbed a pen, paper, started writing stuff down, and now here we are, like 4 or 5 years later. Um,
Mm.
and it's really, um, if you're a fan of my work, and I feel really weird saying this because I look, I'm a guy who, I put on my pants one leg at a time too, like everybody else. But if you're a fan of my work, then I say just have faith that you're going to like this. It is, and if you don't know me and you don't know my work, this is this. And I did a graphic novel last year that I self published called The Death of Bobby Hart. Um,
Mm.
this is me with the kid gloves taken off. This is me not answering to anybody. This is me going, this is what I want to do. And with both of those projects, Bobby Hart and with Blackenstein, these were projects that other publishers were like, yeah, we don't know. We're not sure,
Mm.
and it's like, okay, oh, you want me to do what? You want me to do Cyborg, a book that I was miserable on? Oh, you want me to do Power Man and Iron Fist, a book that got canceled prematurely? You want me to do Bitter Root, which I'm already doing? No, this is me doing what I want to do.
Mm.
Um, and so that's the thing. This is I've been ecstatic since I saw Sinners when it came out, but I've been ecstatic watching over nearly a year all the hype around it and the Oscars and all that stuff. But what I loved most about Sinners, what I truly loved about Sinners, was it was Ryan Coogler believing in himself, believing in the people around him, surrounding himself with people who believed in him and his vision, and then we saw the end result. And to me, it's like I'm not comparing the monster of Blackenstein, not to be confused with Blackenstein with Sinners, but it's that same idea of
Mm.
believing in yourself, right? Um, it's that knowing that even if only 10 people read this comic, and there's going to be more than 10 people that read it, but even if only 10 people read this Blackenstein comic, they're going to read one of the best comics David Walker's ever written, right? And it was hilarious to me because there's a couple of people whose opinions I truly like, I live by. And and Brian Bendis is one of them. We're dear friends. He's like my brother. In fact, I got to go over to his place later tonight. um, and when he calls me up after he reads it and he says, oh my God, I didn't know this is what you were doing, but how did you do this? And I'm like, I feel great, right? When my cousin, who we grew up reading comics together, we grew up watching movies together, when he says to me, this is you, this is 100% you, this is you unfiltered, I'm like, okay, this is what I wanted. So yeah, so that's what it
You,
is. I am the monster of Blackenstein, not to be confused with Blackenstein. I'm the misunderstood monster that is just trying to get people to understand me, but everything I say comes out sounding like this. Walla walla.
motherfucker. It's so funny too because that's the title of the episode is motherfucker because like that line resonated with me so much as I'm reading this. I'm like, he did that on purpose, and
Yeah,
I hate it, but I love it at the same time
yeah,
because I know other people aren't gonna get it, but I love it, and it makes me like so happy that you did it, and it's just like, oh man, like genuinely it's insane. Cause like even reading it, because I love wordy things. I love
yeah.
reading like lengthy books. I challenged my French teacher one year that I couldn't read all of Les Mis in less than a semester, and I did it, and I was so proud of myself. So even reading what you're putting here, I'm like, this book feels like it's for me. It feels like it's just fun. It's calling out the BS, and like I even said, I wish you would have hit the nail on the head even harder at one point. So it's just like you really have just like written like amazing book here, and you unfiltered is the best shit, man. Like genuinely, it is the best, and I'm excited to see what you do with Blackenstein versus Cthulhu because I'm over here like, how is this gonna go crazier?
Oh, it's going to get crazier. You should, especially when I start talking to guys like John Jennings and some of these other folks, my cousin and even Bendis, and they're like, "Oh, you should. Have you thought about doing this?" And I'm like, "Just wait, just
See,
wait."
see, see. Like now, I need like David Walker and ex Ronnie Barnes for like redo a Blackula. Like make it, but like make it satirical as hell. Because Ronnie Barnes wrote like redid
Yeah,
Blackula, but like nail it even harder.
yeah.
Make it be even deeper in the pocket. I would love that.
There was Rodney and I were working on a top secret project that never went anywhere. Um, I need to give him a call
Oh,
because I haven't talked to him in ages. I love Rodney, and I'd love to work on something with him. But at the same time, it's like, you know, I like Rodney so much. I just want to read his stuff, right? It's like, I, what if he's not any fun to work with? Like, there's nothing worse than when you discover that. So,
right.
but he when we did work together, it was great. I wish it panned out. And he's a great guy, and I just like I'm one of those people who it's pretty rare that I get mad at someone else's success. I look at Rodney's success and I'm just happy. I'm just ecstatic.
See, it's funny too because like I remember when like recently I found the Run Fool podcast, and I'm
Yeah.
like, that title feels like something David would have said to tell him to do. Like that's why it's always funny when I hear it. Like because obviously like Solid Comics is like right on the head, and I'm like, did David tell him to do that? Like that's what it felt like when I first read it. Like that feels like something that y'all had a conversation
No, I was mad when he came up with it though, because I was like, "Damn, I've got an idea for a podcast. I have ideas for podcasts all the time, and it never happens. I've got one that I'm actually going to do that I think people will either hate or love. I don't care. We're going to find out when I do it.
Oh man, like I will say you have definitely maybe the happiest kid on the planet when you said you want to come back because like I could just talk history for hours with you. Like genuinely, you're my idol. It means the world to me. And like this, I like I said, I never thought this day would come. So like, thank you so much for taking the time to be here
No,
because it
thank
means
you, man.
everything
This
to
is
me.
great. It's and again, like I said, I've been watching your stuff for a long time, and just and a lot of it was Ray Height, and I was talking to him about this Kickstarter campaign, and he was like, "Man, you need to reach out and talk to some of these like." There's some cats out there that really know what they're talking about. I said, I know who they are, and he's like, have you talked to anyone? I was like, yeah, I haven't talked to most of them. And in my mind, I'm like, why would anyone want to talk to me, right? That's how I think about myself. um, and so he really pushed me, and so I did, I'm here talking to you. I talked to Blurred Without Fear, Ernie, a couple days ago. Um, and then I've done more podcasts in the last 2 weeks than I've probably done in the last year, which and I haven't even talked about my new book is coming out that isn't
That
Black
was my last.
Inside.
I had two last things I want to talk about. Like you're a Hollywood historian as well. Like what's got you like what made you want to write this book? Because I've already pre-ordered it. I'm
Yeah.
excited. That's gonna be on my shelf in less than a week. So like, what made you want to dive deep into something like this?
Uh, I've loved film for a very long time, almost as long as I've loved comics. And believe it or not, I actually probably know more about movies than I do about comics. I was I started self publishing in the '90s. I had my own fanzine. It's called Badass Mofo. I wrote a lot
Yes.
about black exploitation. I made a documentary about black exploitation. I've written about and I was a professional film critic for nearly 10 years. Worked at a newspaper for 7 years as a editor and as a film critic. And so that's in my DNA as much as comics. And I've always wanted to write a book about the history of black film, black representation in film, not just black exploitation. That had been my focus for a very long time. But in studying that particular era, the '70s, it's like you can't study the '70s and not go back to the '60s, and then you go back to the '50s, and then you go '40s, '30s, '20s, teens, and then you're next thing you know you're in the late 1800s, the invention of film, and 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 all the while it's like, oh yeah, no, black people were part of the film industry from the very beginning, and not always in a positive way, almost never in a
Mm-hmm.
positive way. But
Yeah.
also when you really look at what we think of, and I say we, I'm talking about the entire planet. When the entire planet when they think of black people, especially black Americans, what they think of is informed primarily by mass media.
Mhm.
And what film did, what motion pictures did, is it came along at a time, and it instead of things being written in sand or written in mud, it wrote stuff in stone. It
Yeah.
wrote stuff in a way that's it's almost impossible to undo. And I said this, in a piece I wrote recently. um, Film took the curse that America placed on people of African descent, and it just made it that much harder to undo that curse. You
Damn.
know, and part of the reason I love Sinners so much is because it ain't a movie about vampires. It's a movie about restoring our humanity, and it's about understanding who we are, because to be black in America, to be biracial in America, to be a woman in America, to be trans in America, to be any of these things, to be queer in America, it's really it's what other people are telling you you are, and
Yeah.
that's wrong, right? Like, who you are, right? And if you know who you are, but you're getting these conflicting messages from mass media and from politicians and from bigots, it messes your head up, right?
Yeah.
And so part of what I wanted to do with this book, and I wanted to write it for, I would say, teens on up into early 20s, college students. I wanted not only to give them something intellectually to chew on, but to also think in a more existential way of like, well, who am I? And how much of how I identify was created by somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what this book really was. And it's I'm still learning a lot, and it's interesting because, again, I walked away from film criticism, um, and a career in journalism, because I decided I wanted to chase after my dream of working in comics. I'd given up on comics. I found a career for myself, and then I met Will Eisner in person. We had a conversation, and he was like, "Why did you give up on comics?" And he said to me, without even having read a single thing I'd ever written, he said, "I bet you'd be really good at making comics." And when Will Eisner says that to you, you don't have much of a choice but to go, I'm going to try to do this. And it was also because I knew at that point in my life, I was in my early 30s. I understood that if I didn't chase after comics, by the time I got in my 40s and then my 50s and my 60s, I'd be full of regrets. I
Mm.
didn't want to live with those regrets. And now I've climbed a couple mountains in the comic industry. I'm still climbing them, but I'm also going back to my love of film and history. Because you're talking about love of
Mm.
history, right? I also love the history of comics, man. There's some crazy shit in there, right?
Yeah.
And I love sharing that information with people. And I also like looking at stuff and going, okay, how can I subvert this? How can I, what can I do with Will Eisner's depiction of Ebony White? How can I subvert this? How can I subvert this in a way that isn't shitting all over everything else that Eisner did, but also going, hey, that's what we did with Big Jim and the White Boy. It was like we weren't destroying everything Mark Twain has done. Mark Twain's a great writer, but we
Right.
were saying you could have done better.
Right. It's reformatting. It's making
Yeah,
things be from a different perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that.
recontextualizing, exactly.
Yes.
So
Well, like another perfect example is like how harken back to like your love of monsters is look at what's gone on with the Interview with the Vampire in the past like 3-4 years,
yeah,
where they
yeah,
took
yeah.
they took and Rice said we're gonna just take all that thing you wanted to do but you couldn't do, and now we're gonna reframe it in a better way, and that's been insane to see that fully like come about.
Oh, look at Godzilla -1.
Yeah.
Like, look at the arguably in the top three greatest Godzilla movies of all time.
Yeah.
70 years worth of Godzilla movies, 60 years worth of Godzilla movies, however long it's been. And it's like, and I remember, okay, I like some of the more recent stuff. I was like, I don't know. Am I gonna like Godzilla -1? Oh my god, I've fallen in love with Godzilla again. I'd forgotten why I loved him so much. Then I go back and watch a bunch of the old movies, and I was like, now I remember why I stopped watching some of these Godzilla movies, right? So, you know, it's we take the things that we love, we take the things that we hate, we take the things that bother us, we take the things that inspire us, and we should filter them all through ourselves and then create something that heals the version of us that is wounded, that wasn't given what it was needed. Everything that I do is healing a much younger version of myself who a lot of my scars, a lot of my wounds are very similar to other people's.
Yeah. Huh. You got me emotional over here. Um, we always end with a final statement. Like, what is your closing statement for issue number 30? This will be 30. That'll be 39. You're going to be 39.
Okay, which is a good
do
number.
Yeah. What do you want to leave people with for issue 39 of Comics Unmasked?
What I want to leave with them is that this is an incredible medium, but it's more than a medium. It's also an industry. It's also a livelihood, which is what an industry is. Um, and we have, each of us has a role and a responsibility in it, whether we're a creator, whether we're a retailer, or whether we're a fan. And we should take that responsibility seriously, because if we don't do all that we can, then this whole thing falls apart, right? and
Right.
and there's, for every one of you, you ask, like, what are the comics that left me with a sense of wonder when I was a child? Like, I want to leave that with somebody else. I want to give that to another kid. Better yet, how about I give that to someone who's 30 who thinks they'd never like comics, right? Like,
Right.
everybody should read comics. And it's funny, I said the other day about Blackenstein, I said, that Wu-Tang is for the children, but so is Blackenstein, and comics,
He was there
com-
for the children,
yeah,
literally.
he was there for the children, right? So, comics are for everybody. This medium should be for everybody, and I believe everybody has a voice, and everybody should find a way to make their voice heard, although not always at the expense of other people. Sometimes you got to speak up against certain types of people. It's okay to speak up against
Yeah.
the people that are oppressing you, but in doing that, you got to make sure you're not, you know, you got to know who to bully, right?
Mm.
Captain America punched Nazis. That's fine, right? He wasn't running around punching, you know, trans kids.
Mm.
Captain America wouldn't have done that. Any man who wears his underwear on the outside and a mask, he's not going to beat up on trans kids. I hope.
Well, you would hope, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Like,
Thank
this
you.
means everything to me.
Well, you anytime. I'd love to come back. This was great. You're my kind of nerd, and we had a really good time. And we'll get people, now that people can see us side by side. They're going to be like, are they related? Are they?